everyone, this is Kook Spooks and welcome to my review of 2024. I need to stop starting videos by saying it's been a while. I think we all need to anticipate it's been a while. So in some ways 2024 was a bit of a flop as a reading year, but in a lot of ways it was a really special year for me personally. Towards the end, got a bit difficult. So let's boot up Storygraph and see what on earth I did manage to read in 2024. So I'm surprised at myself for managing to read a total of 42 books and a total of 10,958 pages. Technically I met my reading goals because I set them to one book and 365 pages. That's a fun percentage over to see on pages. But in the back of my head there is always that whisper of 100 books. And honestly, in all the years I've been doing this, I don't know if I ever actually have beaten 100 books. So it's a totally arbitrary number. So I think this year I might put like 10 books and then up it every time I hit another 10. Let's delve into these reading moods. So unsurprisingly, we've got dark. A lot of what I read tends to be dark, whether it's fantasy or quite gritty translated fiction, so that isn't too much of a surprise. So reflective is actually bigger. Reflective, again, it's all about introspective journeys in a lot of the literary and translated stuff that I read. Adventurous is going to be where the sci-fi and fantasy comes in, and emotional, I guess. I guess most things are emotional. So, pace is interesting for once. Not everything I read is fast paced. I understand the merit of a slow book, I really do, but if I'm already struggling to read, it needs to be at least medium to get me through it. So the biggest chunk of the page number pie chart is in the less than 300 pages, which I think there's a lot of skill in writing a book under 300 pages and getting in everything that you want to say and saying it beautifully. That is a real skill. However, I would have liked to have some more variety in the books that I've read. I'm very impressed that I've got a sliver there that is more than 500 pages. I think, don't know where that's come from, to be honest. Yes, I do. Priory of the Orange Tree. But interestingly, when it comes to the fiction non-fiction split, it's not quite 75-25, but barely. I'm honestly again surprised that I've even got 26% in my non-fiction. I think it's because I read a lot of the 404 Inklands books because we have the subscription this year, but I've not sat down and read any kind of chunky 300 page plus non-fiction. It is all those kind of very slim 80 pages at a time kind of vibes. Again, I'd like to broaden that out this year, but because I'm mostly going to be shopping my shelves, I am limited to the non-fiction that I've already got, which isn't a lot, but hopefully I can crack through it in 2025. Genre? Tea. I've got no commentary for you on this. That is exactly where I expected everything to be. I am glad that fantasy is so highly kind of represented there. I feel like the past couple of years I've really tried to focus in on literary and translated fiction, which is very worthy and I think has helped me a lot in my own writing, but isn't fun. Well, it is fun, but it's not as fun as magic and aliens. So really focusing in on sci-fi and fantasy is going to be a really big goal for me in the coming year. Right, so format, this is not accurate, and I'll tell you why it's not accurate. I don't know how to tell Storygraph whether I read it physically or listened to it on an audiobook. I don't know how to do that. So the fact that there is anything that is not print on there is confusing. So my most read author is T.H. White, who wrote The Once and Future King. I have a beautiful bind up of this that I read partially physically and partially in audiobook form. And there are 5 books within this bind up, so that's how he ended up being up there. I don't think I read more than one of any other author this year. Let's look at this graph. Oof. There isn't a lot to say that this graph doesn't already tell me, other than the fact that for the last couple of months of the year I have started about 12 books and just not finished any of them. Like I've got War and Peace on the go, I've got The Cloisters on the go, I've got If We Were Villains on the go. There are so many books that I am actively reading, and I've just not finished a single one. And I've also had possibly the most stressful November and December known to man, so I'm not going to hold myself too accountable for that. The rest of the year, yeah, that was on me. And then this overall yearly rating of 3.8, I think, is good. I think it's interesting because I am quite happy at DNF books, so maybe I'd expect that to be higher. Let's dig into a little bit more with the bar graph. So I can see that I have actually finished a couple of books that I've given to 2.75, and when we dig into that, that's 2 books from the T.H. White, The Once and Future King bind up. So obviously I've thought I would like to reach the end of this bind up, so I'll have to get through the books I don't like, and some of the other books were great, so I feel like that's worth it. Any other year, any other book, that probably wouldn't have happened, so that would have raised my average. But 10 5-star books in a year where I only read 42 books, I'm pretty happy with that. Should we look at what they are? So in January I read 3 5-star books. I read Dark Days by James Baldwin, which is a series of essay collections, and I was quite taken by the candor he had around his homosexuality and how that was received at the time. I thought that he called me out personally on many levels and that had to be a 5-star. Like, now I understand what people say when they talk about understanding the human condition. That man did. Then I read Bonsai. I don't have the book in front of me, so I will put the author and the translator somewhere. This was a really interesting book about kind of obsession and copying people, and I think it's interesting that I can't remember too much about it. I think it was also about kind of reading the same books as someone and becoming like them, so maybe it didn't deserve that 5-star because I can't really remember, it hasn't stuck with me, but in the moment it was an enjoyable read. And then Priory of the Orange Tree, giggling, kicking my feet. It is one of my new favourite books of all time, if not the favourite book of all time. It has everything. It has dragons, it has lesbians, it has folklore, but mostly the dragons and the lesbians, you know? I had the opportunity to buy the prequel with a voucher that I'd gotten for Christmas, and I didn't. Stupid girl. stupid girl. But yeah, I've got nothing else to say. It was stunning. It was perfect. I loved it. Some people say, oh, you know, a 5-star book isn't perfect. That book is. If that book has 1 fan, it's me. If that book has no fans, I'm dead. No 5 stars in February. In March, I read The Future by Naomi Alderman of The Power fame. Amazing. I didn't know how she was going to follow up The Power, but this was a really solid, I want to say soft sci-fi, dystopian, speculative, about major tech conglomerations and the things that neurotic, self-obsessed, narcissistic people will believe, and how to manipulate them to actually better the world. And it had a lot of action in it. It had lesbianisms in it. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It's lesbians. I'm doing a really bad job of explaining this. 3 tech CEOs invent an app secretly between them all that tells them when the world is going to end. It tells them the world's going to end and they get whisked off, but they end up on a deserted island. Is that really what happens? You have to read it to find out. Nothing in April, but in May we had a 5-star. Just in time for my birthday, 5-star, I read Penance by Eliza Clark, who wrote Boy Parts and who I've been slowly developing a parasocial relationship with online. I think we can admit that to ourselves. This is a murder mystery, kind of. I'm not a crime girly, I don't know all the words to say. This is an investigative journalist telling the story of a murder of a young girl committed by 3 of her friends. It's set in a fictional seaside town in Yorkshire, very much like Scarborough or Whitby, but less touristy now, had that history of being a touristy place. And it's impossible to me that this is a fake place because it is so beautifully rendered and so realistic. I live so close to there. We've all been at those kinds of places. it is just real. It's impossible to me that this isn't a real village that exists, and it was gripping and it was upsetting, and it really delved into the impact that true crime has and the ethics of true crime, which I was already uncomfortable with, but this has really cemented it for me that like I'm not a true crime girly. And I then went to a book event with Eliza Clark, and she signed my copy and she drew a goose in it. In June I read Of Cattle and Men. Do I remember what this was about? Absolutely not. From the title, I feel like it was similar to Tender as the Flesh, and if I read the blurb, I would probably be back in it with you. But it was very short, and it was good vibes, and it was almost certainly about cannibalism. Our last 3 5 stars are in July. I think that's the point in which I kind of said, enough's enough. So I finished the Children of Time trilogy with Children of Memory. Not as strong as the first 2 books. Well, no, that's not true. So I can't really tell you much about this because it's the end of a trilogy. In the first book, we encounter spiders that are people on a terraformed planet. In the second, it is a conglomeration of species meeting octopi that are sentient, and it's all about communication, which obviously for me, love that. Like, how do we communicate with these octopi? And then 3, it is more about AI and when AI develops sentience. So hopefully that doesn't spoil any through plots. But yeah, I loved this. I loved it. I think I'm going to be an Adrian Tchaikovsky girl. I have all the books on the wish list. I have a couple of books physically knocking around that I need to read. He is, I think, one of my favourite authors. I think I can now put him in that tier. It's just him and Becky Chambers cheersing across the room and nobody else. Then I read Dreamland by Rosa Rankin G, which is a very near future dystopia set again in one of those, I assume, Yorkshire, maybe further south, probably further south, seaside towns. It was set in Margate, there you go. And it is all about the effects of climate change and the knock-on that has on how people live in their lives, on politics that swing to the right, and then how we abandon those people. So at the very start of the novel, we're on a beach and someone is washed up dead and someone else is trying to save them because the tide's coming in, and we know that there is a wall that is being built to separate the population from these people who have been forced to stay on the coast, who have effectively been left for dead. So we then flash back to see how this happened at every stage, and guess what there is?
Here we go, lesbians, come on! Let's go! Let's go, lesbians! Oh my god, lesbians!
And then my last 5-star of the year was Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Excellent. Excellent fantasy. It felt like a warm hug. I was looking to start a couple of more fantasy series in the year. I think this is the only one that I really did start, but it felt like I'd been scooped up and given a cuddle. It is about a bastard called Fitz who is brought to the castle by his maternal granddad and says, you know what, you got him, you can have him. And then he is brought up as a bastard in court. He never really has any meetings with his dad, and his dad abdicates from being next in line to the throne because of the scandal. So then it's another layer of guilt on this boy, and he has kind of an ancient magic that's looked down upon, but he then goes into training for the higher form of magic, and it is a really difficult read in a lot of ways because this poor boy is relentlessly bullied by the adults around him. But then he takes on a tutelage under the Master Assassin for the king and becomes the Assassin's Apprentice and goes on a big journey to do some assassinating at the end. And we watch him kind of wrestle with that because fundamentally he's a really good lad. He doesn't really want to kill people. But then there are consequences of that. And it is written as though he is a much older man looking back on these events, so at least you've got that to hold on to, that, oh, he survives. And I'm wondering whether the rest of the series is going to follow that same format of Fitz being an old man writing his histories. Oh, my little cat has come to join us. Would you like a cuddle? Or would you like to bite me? No DNFs. I'm not sure if that's true or if I've just forgotten how to record them. But off the top of my head, I can't remember reading anything so foul that I had to put it down. That really was our 2024 wrapped up in reading, and it might be a little bit self-indulgent, but I'd like to, just for myself, put a little montage of really important things that happened in the year outside of my reading, so feel free to click away. This is entirely a vanity project for me at this point, but some really special things happened, and I would like to put them all in one place to remember them. What do you think? Thank you for watching, and I will see you again very, very soon. Bye.